Hey guys, this is Cassie, and I am going to take some time today to show y'all how we comp properties all over the country that are rural properties. Now, we get this question all of the time. I don't know how you guys go nationwide and how you comp rural. How do your comp guidelines apply to that? So I'm going to dive into the things that we do to make adjustments to get the comps that an appraiser would get in more rural areas. And we do this all over the country, all of the time. So I'm going to get started. I'm just going to go through those first handful of questions on how I would approach comping rural properties, right? So one of the first tips that I want to give you guys is I want you to understand that when you get into rural and you're not in the inner city, you have a more narrow buyer's pool. And so you're going to want to make sure that the property is deeper. There's a lot less, options, and buyers tend to want to buy a little bit deeper. You can't really have slim margins like that, like you can in the inner city, because they end up having to have like longer holding costs, things like that, without going too far into it. And then you'll end up having kind of the same thing that will happen in lower income areas, even in the inner city. So you have to remember that your margins, you really want them to be on point first and foremost. And let me go ahead and share this screen, and then I'll start getting into some more of those tips and tricks. You can basically look for population, how many buyers, how quickly the market's moving. The same comp rules definitely do apply. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys an example. Because sometimes people are saying, well, first thing I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to go to the Google map. Well, here we are. How far away am I from larger cities? Well, it's not that far. It's still rural, things like that. But I might not have a street view. It might be just a little bit harder to get information online when you run into these scenarios. And so, you got to figure out what you're looking for, right? I always do pull this up. If you've taken the comp training, you know why. So those are my first 3 steps right there. Everything's the same. Comp rules still apply, okay? They just apply in a different way. So we're going into here, and then, so you see, you've got a little town here. We're a little bit off the beaten path on the town, and then we're off the beaten path with our subject property, right? And so what I end up doing is I end up pulling it up. I see the property information just like normal, okay? And I'm going to go into my comps, and I don't have any comps. So one of the first things that I do is I go in here, and rather than keeping this over and under whatever it is, like 250, 300, I just go from like 0 maybe up to 1500. Okay. So I'm broadening the square footage scope. Okay. Not going up to 3000. You can go up to like 3000, see if anything pops up. It usually doesn't. So see how I did that there? So I'm going to keep it right around 1500 right there. And the next thing I'm going to do is, when you have a rural property, you probably have a little bit of land with it. Okay. Look at that lot size right there. Okay. It's just over 4 acres. So yeah, within half a mile, you're definitely not going to get as many comps. And I think that this is the first thing people fail to logistically realize, because when they pull it up, they're like, oh no, there's no comps, So the next thing I usually do is I'll just go out 1 mile and I'll see what pops up. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to scroll over, and I'm going to see within 1 mile, we have much less acres, about the same, 1300 5-year different build. We have a mobile home here, guys. Okay. So this is this is really good news, right? I may end up adjusting up and going, okay, what if I go to 1,800 square feet? What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to see the closest I can get in distance to see what the market can handle. And this is where those things like price per square foot start to fall into play, right? So we do have a couple of other comps that pulled up that are closer. They're just a little bit larger by 400 square, or this one's a little bit larger by a couple hundred square feet, right? But this is built in 1942. It's a single family home and it sold for this. So this is our first target on single family that we've got. And then the next, I'm just going to keep tweaking the numbers, go out 1.5 miles. Well, now I'm understanding that my market isn't necessarily the neighborhood, it's the town. Okay. This town is the neighborhood. And you have to realize, like, you don't get to do that when you're in a subdivision in a city, right? This is a town, it's different, right? Your buyer's pool is in that town, right? So you have to kind of remember that when you're going into smaller towns, this is what you're looking for. And that's where you really adjust those comp guidelines. And this is where people start to struggle. You also have to dig in a lot further, guys. You have to dig into this information as much as you possibly can. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and you have to understand the reason for this. Let me actually hold that thought that I was going to move on to. You have to understand that when an appraiser goes out, and I always use this phrase, they have to comp it to something. They're not going to go back 3 years before they go 2 miles over when you have a property that is, well, let's do that math, 180,000. Don't judge me. I round this. Oh, I already did this math. It's just over 4 acres. Yeah, whatever. It's just over 4 acres. So you go over 4 acres, like you could do the math of how many miles is it 4 acres across. I mean, you don't know, but like approximately how many miles if you walked 4 acres of land, it depends on the layout of land, but you got to understand like that when an appraiser goes to appraise this property, he's going to use the most like and kind within those guidelines of those comp rules. So when you have to start going further out in distance, we're already a year back. I mean, yeah, could you go a couple months, maybe go 18 months back? Sure. You could try to find something that maybe is closer in that 18 months. And this is one of the reasons, a lot of people ask me, why do I like to go into prop stream? And it's just because it's easier for me to kind of make these adjustments fairly quickly versus like a percentage or a sliding scale on other ones. It's just fairly easy for me because it's all right here. I make them more quickly. So when I went back 1.5 years, you saw I didn't get any comps that were closer. So I'm just going to go right back to my, whatever, my 1 year mark. And I'm just going to start studying what the market demands. So you'll see that you have all kinds of things from mobile homes, single family homes. Sometimes when you see this, you'll see like commercial or warehouse kind of properties, etc. I'm not filtering out the mobile homes yet, and there is a reason for that, because when you're looking at land or you're looking at rural properties, these are almost an acre property, just at an acre. I think an acre is 40. Is it 43,700 or 47 or 1,000, not 100? I have to look. Yeah, it's just that is an acre. 43. I thought it was 570 or something. There's a 7 in there in my head. So about like 43,000 is an acre. And so you have a 1 acre lot. Part of the reason I sometimes like leave the mobile homes up there is like I want to understand what someone will pay for a mobile home. It's on an acre in this town. And if I'm looking at those, like let's just say I unselected this, it is not, you guys, necessarily in those comp rules or the comp guidelines. It is that we have a mobile home that sold for 125 and we have a mobile home that sold for 26,000. Okay. So if I'm looking at those two properties, both are one is on an acre and one is on almost 2 acres. One was built in 2019, one was built in 2000. And where's the location of those, right? It's comp number 2 and comp number 4, okay? So number 2 is right here. Number 4 is right here. I'm not going to go so far as to like digging into those at this time when I'm comping. I'm just looking at it and going, interesting. Okay, I don't feel like there's going to be a major difference that I can see from the location of this. There must be something to do with either the land in and of itself or the mobile home in and of itself, right? So I'm pretty much kind of ignoring those from here. I'm going to select everything else. I'm going to take those mobile homes. I'm just going to unselect them. And I'm going to have it in my brain that somebody was willing to pay 125,000. So I know my property should be worth more than that. That's where I'm at. I'm just understanding the market at this point. You know, what it would sustain. And part of the reason is because I have this single family home right here that sold for 30,000, which is very strange to me. So I'm going to look into those details. It's a 2-1-868 on an acre built in 1953. Well, that's probably not going to be a comp for me, but I'm going to keep it up here. It's data. So what I'm saying in pointing these things out is that you have to dig into more of the data to understand this market more than you would something that's very, very clear cut and in, you know, a neighborhood where the comps just reveal themselves a lot faster. So this property right here is a single family home. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, a lot more square footage, by like 500 or so, and on a lot less land, a little bit newer by 10 years. So I'm just going to have to take into consideration those adjustments that I have to make and keep chugging along on collecting that data. I've got that one selected already. I'm probably not. I'm going to go ahead and assume that these are not in good shape. Those kinds of properties are not in good shape. And I'm probably going to go ahead and look into one of those, try to figure out why it sold for so much less. Something, 600 square feet, 1958 build, might not have been remodeled. That very much gives me like, we should definitely, you know, on something that we should definitely be above 50,000, right? I can go look at where those are. And what I'm going to try to do from here, though, to be expedient is, even though this is on a lot less square footage, I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be a good comp, but we have extra acreage. I'm going to look and see what kind of property we're dealing with. I'm going to see if I got some street view. This is kind of going to be the difference, right? So it's every property we're probably going to deal with in this town is going to be kind of that situation. But what's interesting about this is this one is really private, really secluded, but still really close to town. This should be more attractive, right? To to buyers. But you see how we don't even have any like street views? There's a mobile home park right here. There's campgrounds right there. So it's kind of tough because you can't really see too much of the neighborhood, but you shouldn't have to as much. We've got more land. We've got it. And this is kind of nice because it's a good amount of land, not that far away from town, right? So it's rural, but you're kind of having to pick the closest comps you can get, right? So I'm just going to go ahead. This is going to be one of those where, because of the build year, you're going to have to go ahead and assume, like, if you're on the phone with that seller, can you please, at least send me some photos of what the property looks like a little bit. I mean, look at this. This is a neighborhood here, right? Every home's going to be a little bit different. You have to kind of just look at the value of real estate brings in this market to the buyers. I would go ahead and say 144,000 is really good. You cannot utilize this property on this road. Is potentially not going to be the same. You can't just say the property is going to be worth 300,000. So looking at my comps that I have selected right from here, there's a lot less acreage there. I'm thinking there's something interesting going on here. I might look in. It might be a package deal. It might be commercial, like from the looks of that street view, but one of these things is not like the others. So I have two comps between 100 and 144 that look like houses that are probably similar to ours. Maybe ours is a little bit nicer. I'm just going to keep searching. I'm going to go out 2 miles. I'm going to see if I get anything else. So I've got my property up here. That was this. Oop, let me scroll over. That was this one. I've got this one. I've got this one. And here we go. I got a few more right out here. Again, I know they're far away, you guys, and you are going to just have to dig into that data. 1051 square feet. A lot less land with it, but that's okay. These are a lot older, but that's okay. You see what I'm saying? That's okay. The appraiser will make those adjustments very similarly to, this is even a different town, you guys. But boom, this is like a residential neighborhood. Got some things going on there. So from here, because you can do street view, I might select that one. I might select that one. And I might select that one. And I'm probably going to unselect that one. I have consistent data right here. I've got 5 comps selected that I'm just going to look into. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now that on the phone with this seller, I am going to be, I'm going to be asking, like, I can almost guarantee you that even though, like, you have this kind of house and this kind of house, they look nothing alike, right? Even though we don't have that in there, these are still like, this is a little country town right next to each other, right? So even though we don't have those in there, I'm going to make those adjustments. I'm coming up with 144 5 all day long with these comps. Okay. I know you had to go broader, and I know we've talked about this a couple of times for people when it's like it's rural, right? You do definitely need to look for buyers in that town. And I'm going to get into another point of just simply looking on Zillow. If you don't have an investor lift, if you don't, I don't know how you guys pull your buyers list and you start to get rural, just start to look for the activity in the market between what is active, right? See how far away it is from another town. So we're going to go in and we're going to do that in just a second. But what I'm really trying to dig into here is dig into each one of these comps, see what it's like. I'm on the phone with this seller and I'm saying, kind of tell me what the house looks like. What is the layout? Is this brick? Is it a different kind of siding? Is it, do you have this, that, or the third, right? If I go to my property details, this one is a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom. 1160 square feet. It's, you really want to verify that because that does kind of hurt your ARV a little bit. You look at that tax assessed value. They're assessing this for $95,000. I can almost guarantee you that it's worth a little bit more on the market. You know what I'm saying? Looks like they've owned it since. Sorry. I'm not pulling how long they've owned it right off the top of my head, or I'm seeing it or I'm missing it. Either way, like that's a good baseline for you. If you're concerned about those comps that are popping up, like that single family that popped up for 30,000, you don't need to be concerned. You're looking for the most consistent data, and then you're going to make adjustments. The 2-1 thing, that's something I would be wondering about. You've got vinyl siding. You've got a garage. So I'm almost guessing that we're not going to have issues. Sometimes sellers will be able to send you like photos of the property just preliminarily, just so you, while you're on the phone comping with them. I typically will say something along the lines of like, just so I can make sure like we have the same kind of property as the comps that I'm pulling and the data I'm getting. Can you shoot me a photo, or can you tell me a little bit about like the style of the home? And I will ask those questions. And that's usually the only time I deviate and get into a little bit more detail about specifically the property, and where a lot of people would make the mistake of, trying to choose that $300,000 property. It's absolutely not going to happen, guys. I always tell you right now. And then a lot of people would also make the mistake of trying to like comp for an acre of land and adding, X amount of dollars to whatever ARV they have pulled up here. So let's just go ahead and look at this. I'm making the adjustments. I'm really looking at that average sales price, the price per square foot. What we're looking at there. I'm making an adjustment for this land more than likely. So this one you have just over an acre. This one you have 4 acres. The other comp that we have is on a very small lot, and that's more likely in a residential neighborhood. This is almost a couple of acres. So I'm really going to be looking at that one, on a couple acres. This definitely helps us get bumped up there. So I would, honest to goodness, dig into this property first and foremost. I'm going to be trying to look at that street view. Man, it's really pretty. Virginia, a lot of these houses can be really pretty. And we hit home runs in Virginia on properties like this. I'm just letting y'all know. And like a lot of people are going, holy crap, blah, 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 blah. It's so hard to comp. It's rural. I'm like, man, we hit home runs on these properties in Virginia. This is the kind of thing where it becomes important to ask about, is this a brick home? Is it a ranch style? The aluminum thing, we saw one right next door to the one comp. I don't think it's going to be an issue. How many car garage does it have? Can you send me a photo from the street, from your mailbox, whatever? I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know that on this one, I would go ahead and pull up those property details. And I'm going to go ahead and see. Now, the last sale date was 2023. So the tax assessed value was lower, right? But what I'm really trying to look at is that market land value for the 2 acres. The market land value, according to the tax assessor, is $30,000. Now let's just go look at ours. Market land value is $35,000 for the 4 acres. I can almost guarantee you that our additional 2 acres and our location bumps up our market price to from 145, I said, to 165. Slap $10,000 an acre on that and go on with your day. And I genuinely say that because we have that comp at 195. I'm not saying go with that forever and ever for always, but this is where I get in there. I run those numbers. I'm on the phone with the seller this whole time. I could be wrong. I'm okay with being wrong. It happens. I go back to a seller sometimes and be like, we're telling the seller how we're calculating that value. Oh, sorry, guys. Give me 2 shakes. I'm going back to that seller. I'm telling them how we're calculating that value. Let's just say I have no idea. Let's just say the seller says it needs cosmetics. I was about 23 years old. It was 1,100 square feet. Let's just throw in. I don't even remember where they were at or anything like that. I'm just guessing off the top of my head. There isn't a mortgage or transaction history on this property. But it looks like PropStream estimates this at 130. I'm definitely going to say it's worth more than that. Yeah, this person's probably an investor. I'm going to say there's plenty of room, no mortgage owed. And I'm just going to guess that they may not end up setting the anchor for us on this one. So you kind of got to know. Let's just go ahead with that, see where we're at. I would probably be between 65 and 70 if I'd offer. And that's kind of where you end up getting information. Now, that's of course if the thing needed cosmetics. They could tell us something different. We're just kind of letting you guys know this is how you get in and you comp a rural property. Or this is how we get in there. We comp a rural property. We end up being able to run numbers on it. We do want to be a little bit deeper on these. You do kind of want to lend a hand to getting a little bit on the conservative side for your ARV. There's no way in the world I would put that ARV up to 195 like that one property. And yeah, there's going to be a little bit more due diligence on our end after we get this under contract. Then maybe we would do somewhere closer to the inner city. We may confirm this with an agent. I have a fantastic brokerage that has agents in my network all over the country, even if they're not in my direct group. So for me, like it's something that we may kind of reach out during our due diligence, but we're moving forward. The big thing for us is if we do happen to run across something where it's like, holy cow, the numbers are going to be drastically off. And on this one, like I said, you want to run it at a little bit more conservative. You want to have a little bit more wiggle room on your repair budget. You want to have a little bit more wiggle room for your buyers on their profit. You're going to have a narrower buyer's pool. And yeah, sometimes in a market like this, actually, while I'm talking about this, let me go ahead and share. In a market like this, one of the really important things is to kind of just see what kind of movement, and this will be kind of one of my closing points here, is you want to see what kind of movement you have, right? You don't want to necessarily have a place where like everybody's moving out of town. Um, but you have activity, which means you have buyers and you have sellers. Okay. When you have activity like that, on Investor Lift, there's a heat map. We'll look up our buyers and see how many buyers we have in that area. And a lot of people tend to ask us very similarly to, some other questions that we get asked. Like, that's the cliche thing to say is, well, how rural is too rural? What's the population number that becomes too few type of thing? And it's like, it's not about that. I would absolutely buy and invest in a small town if the numbers made sense, if the market made sense, if the exit strategy made sense, so on and so forth. This to me was, and I will say this, I absolutely I love getting to do what I do. I love working with people that are in our trainings or even in our group. It's a blessing, and we try to give as much as we can. But I get a lot of these that come across my desk, and people are like, "It's rural, and I don't know how to do it." Like, this was one of those properties. To me, there's absolutely no way I treat this any differently than I treat something in the rural city, right? Now, when you get more rural than this, and you start to get where you literally cannot find any activity or any comps moving, you have to consider, is there another exit strategy? You can always find something. Okay. You can always find movement. You can always find something. We have looked at properties in the middle of the desert and been able to find stuff. But, that's not a property that's going to be for us, right? Like, that's going to be something that we go and we get listed, right? There's buyers. There's buyers for everything, right? So, I will tell you guys, like, more often than not, when people bring these rural properties to us, more often than not, this is the scenario versus the desert in the middle of nowhere. And like, I just don't think this is a good fit for us. They just, in their head, they're not seeing the comps because they don't have the street view, or they they had to go out 2 miles, or sometimes even when it's on a bigger piece of land than 4 acres, they're having to go out 10 miles, and they're like, there's just no comps. And I'm like, I went out 6 miles and I found other comps that are just like this. You're just on a huge piece of land, in a town versus in the middle of a major city or right next to a major city. So, and I think that one of the other big mistakes that people make, and look, I get it, because I did this. Like, we started out in this middle of Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas in our investing career. And when we went, to other places, I think my real first experiences outside of DFW with this were honestly probably in Oklahoma. And that kind of put me to the ringer, because there's a lot of rural Oklahoma. But man, properties move there. You know what I mean? You just got to take a look at those days on market. You got to take a look at the market in itself. And, it's easy for me to sit here and give you these tips and tricks on comping something like this. But the reality of it is, if I were to give the one statement, you need to understand real estate markets and how they move. Like, I think that that's going to be a part of, one of the modules that I add in is into our comprehensive training program. I'm going to record a video understanding real estate markets and the economics of that, right? When I started to kind of learn these principles, it was long before I actually took a real estate course or ever thought anything about being in real estate. I didn't know anything. There's a supply and demand thing, right? It's how the market moves and who are your buyers. It's a supply and demand thing. So understanding like the different markets, you kind of have different demands. You can get a property in this town, I almost guarantee you, without even looking at our investor lift, find a way to move it. Now, you might not be able to work the dispositions the same way. You may have to take it down and list it. This might become a listing referral, something to that nature. But it's about understanding how to solve the seller's problem in that market. And as far as the math and the numbers go, it's about kind of adjusting out and understanding the fact that you're not in a subdivision. So you can't comp within your subdivision first and foremost, and kind of just getting in and digging in a little bit more into the property in and of itself. And this is not something, of course, if you are learning comping for the first time, or you're going into broadening your markets for the first time, or getting, in those tier 2 markets, or maybe even like smaller town USA, there's still a lot of value there. This is how we do it. It's just understanding the different levels of real estate markets. And we do really good in Virginia in properties like this. So I really hope this helps you guys, make some of those adjustments, but we still do this and process this the exact same way that we comp and underwrite when we're on the phone with these sellers, and we move these kind of properties all the time. And in fact, when you find good deals like this, the beautiful thing about it is that's not an overly competitive market, and they're really grateful to be talking to, an expert that's not just your traditional real estate agent to help solve their problems. So I hope this helps, guys. This was supposed to be a 12-minute video, and I know I've gone way over that time, but I'm glad I did, because I got 40 minutes in to give you guys more than a few tips and tricks on rural properties, and we will see you on the next video.